Pick any omega you want, my father sneered, his fingers digging into my arm like I was property. I stood there with my eyes on the floor, already knowing how this would end. He would choose my sister. Everyone always did. The room smelled like whiskey and entitlement. 3 alphas stood near the fireplace, drinks in hand, their gazes moving between us with the cold patience of men inspecting livestock. My father smiled too widely, laughed too loudly, enjoying the performance of it all. "This is Laura," he said first, of course. 17. Beautiful. Golden hair. A scent that filled the room and made grown alphas shift where they stood. Perfect. I barely registered what he said next. "And this is Lisa. 22. Capable. Hardworking." He paused, searching for something worth selling. "Very organized." The silence that followed was loud enough to hurt. I kept my eyes down, counting the cracks in the wooden floor. 1, 2, 5, 11. I didn't need to look up to know what they were thinking. Laura, with her intoxicating scent and effortless beauty. And me, plain, quiet, barely detectable. In a world where an omega's value was measured by the strength of her scent, I was invisible. "Choose whichever one suits your needs," my father said cheerfully. "And we'll negotiate terms." Negotiate. As if we were cattle. Then the Alpha King spoke. "I'll take this one." The room froze. I looked up, confused, and realized he wasn't looking at Laura. He was looking at me. Not with hunger. Not with pity. Just focus. "I'm choosing her," he said, pointing at me, his voice calm and final. My father laughed, panicked. "Surely you meant..." I know exactly who I meant. No raised voice. No explanation. Just authority. And in that moment, the moment everyone else stopped breathing, I understood something terrifying. He hadn't chosen me out of kindness. Men like him didn't make choices like that. So the only question left was the one that would follow me into every room, every silence, every sleepless night after. "Why me?" Laura was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe he saw something in you that father never did. Or maybe he made a mistake," Lisa said. "And when he realizes it, he'll send me back." Laura took her hand, squeezed it. "Then make yourself indispensable before he can." It was the kindest thing Laura had ever said to her, and also the saddest, because it assumed that Lisa's value was conditional, something that had to be earned and maintained and defended every single day. But Laura wasn't wrong. That was how the world worked. That was how survival worked. The 3 days passed in a blur. Lisa packed her single bag, said goodbye to a father who barely looked up from his ledger, and stood on the porch at dawn when Donald's carriage arrived. He helped her in without a word, and they rode in silence through the countryside, away from the only home she'd ever known, towards something unknown and possibly worse. The journey took hours. Lisa watched the landscape change from familiar fields to dense forest to rolling hills she'd never seen before. Donald sat across from her, occasionally glancing her way but never speaking. The silence was suffocating, but Lisa didn't break it. What would she even say? "Thank you for buying me? Why did you choose me? What do you want from me?" All questions that felt too dangerous to voice. When they finally arrived at the royal estate, Lisa's breath caught despite herself. It was massive, a sprawling stone structure that looked more like a fortress than a home, surrounded by manicured gardens and high walls. Guards stood at attention as the carriage passed through the gates. Servants moved with quiet efficiency across the grounds. This was power. This was wealth. This was a world so far removed from her father's shabby house that it felt like stepping into a different reality. Donald helped her down from the carriage, his hand firm but impersonal, and led her inside. The interior was just as imposing as the exterior, all high ceilings and dark wood and tapestries that probably cost more than her father made in a year. A woman appeared, older, stern-faced, wearing the crisp uniform of a head housekeeper. "This is Mrs. Renwick," Donald said. "She'll show you to your rooms. If you need anything, ask her." And then he was gone, walking away down a corridor without looking back, leaving Lisa standing in the vast entrance hall with a stranger. Mrs. Renwick looked her up and down, her expression carefully neutral. "This way, miss." Lisa followed her up a grand staircase, down a long hallway lined with portraits of stern-looking people who were probably Donald's ancestors, and finally to a set of double doors. Mrs. Renwick opened them, and Lisa stepped into a room that was bigger than the entire second floor of her father's house. There was a four-poster bed with silk curtains, a fireplace already lit and crackling, a sitting area with plush chairs, a writing desk, tall windows that overlooked the gardens. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. "The Alpha King has instructed that you're to have full access to the estate," Mrs. Renwick said. "You may go wherever you like, use whatever resources you need. Meals are served in the main dining hall, but if you prefer to eat in your rooms, simply ring for service. Do you have any questions?" Lisa shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Very well. I'll leave you to settle in." Mrs. Renwick turned to go, then paused. "A word of advice, miss. The Alpha King is not like other alphas. He values competence over charm, honesty over flattery. If you're genuine with him, you'll do fine." Then she was gone, and Lisa was alone in a room that felt more like a gilded cage than a sanctuary. She set her bag down, walked to the window, and looked out at the manicured gardens below. Somewhere in this massive estate was an Alpha King who had chosen her for reasons she didn't understand. And somewhere in her chest was a fear so deep and old that it felt like a second heartbeat. The fear that said you are not enough, you have never been enough, and when he realizes that, this will all be taken away. She unpacked her bag slowly, methodically. 2 dresses, 1 pair of shoes, her mother's necklace, a book of poetry that had been her mother's too. That was the sum total of her possessions. It took less than 10 minutes. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and waited, because that's what she'd been trained to do. Wait. Obey. Survive. A knock at the door startled her. "Come in," she called, her voice barely above a whisper. A young woman entered, pretty, with dark hair and warm eyes. She was wearing a fine dress, not a servant's uniform, and she carried herself with the easy confidence of someone who belonged here. "Hi," she said, smiling. "I'm Laura." "Well, I guess I'm also Laura, which is going to be confusing. I'm Donald's sister." Lisa stood quickly, unsure of the protocol. "It's nice to meet you." Laura, Donald's sister, laughed. "You don't have to be so formal. We're going to be family now. I just wanted to come introduce myself and see if you needed anything. I know how overwhelming this place can be at first." "I'm fine," Lisa said automatically. "Thank you." Laura studied her for a moment, her expression kind but searching. "You know, when Donald told me he was bringing someone home, I wasn't sure what to expect. But I'm glad it's you." "Why?" The question slipped out before Lisa could stop it. Laura tilted her head, considering. "Because you seem real. Most of the Omegas who've tried to catch Donald's attention over the years have been," she paused, searching for a diplomatic word, "performative. All sweetness and submission and perfectly calculated charm. It's exhausting to watch. You're different." Lisa didn't know how to respond to that. Different was usually code for defective. "Anyway," Laura continued, "if you need anything, anything at all, just find me. I'm usually in the library or the gardens. Oh, and dinner is at 7 in the main hall. Donald will expect you there." She gave Lisa another warm smile and left, closing the door softly behind her. Lisa sat back down on the bed. Dinner at 7. Donald would expect her there. Another command, another expectation. She looked at the clock on the mantel. It was just past 2. 5 hours to prepare herself for whatever came next. She spent those 5 hours doing what she always did when she was anxious. She cleaned. She organized the already immaculate room, rearranging books on the shelf by size, smoothing out non-existent wrinkles in the bedding, wiping down surfaces that didn't need wiping. It was mindless work, but it was familiar, and familiarity was the only comfort she had. At 6:45, she changed into her better dress, the gray one, and made her way downstairs. A servant directed her to the dining hall, a cavernous room with a table that could easily seat 30 people. Donald was already there, sitting at the head of the table, reading through some papers. He looked up when she entered, and for a moment, something flickered in his expression, too quick for her to read. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair beside him. Not at the far end of the table, but right next to him. Lisa sat, folding her hands in her lap, keeping her eyes down. A servant appeared, pouring wine, setting out plates. The food was elaborate, courses she didn't recognize, prepared with a skill that put her father's cook to shame. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Donald ate in silence for a while, then set down his fork. "You're quiet." "I didn't think you wanted conversation," Lisa said carefully. "Why would you think that?" "Because you haven't spoken to me since we left my father's house." He considered this. Fair point. He took a sip of wine. "I'm not good at small talk. I find it pointless." Lisa nodded. She understood that. Small talk required a level of social ease she'd never possessed. "But I do want to know about you," Donald continued. "Who you are. What you want." "What I want doesn't matter," Lisa said before she could stop herself. His eyes sharpened. "Why would you say that?" "Because it's true. I'm here because you chose me. What I want is irrelevant." Donald set his glass down with a deliberate care that suggested he was restraining some emotion she couldn't name. "That's not how I operate." "Isn't it? You made a decision without consulting me. You negotiated terms with my father as if I weren't in the room. You brought me here without asking if I wanted to come. So forgive me if I don't believe that what I want suddenly matters now." The words hung in the air between them, sharp and dangerous. Lisa immediately regretted them. You didn't speak to alphas like that, especially not alpha kings. She braced herself for anger, for punishment, for the backlash she'd just earned. But Donald didn't look angry. He looked, if anything, thoughtful. "You're right," he said finally. "I did all of those things. And you're right that I didn't ask you. But I'm asking now. What do you want?" Lisa stared at him, completely thrown. No one had ever asked her that. No one had ever cared. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Then figure it out," Donald said. "Because this arrangement, whatever it becomes, it won't work if you're just here waiting to be told what to do." "What is this arrangement?" Lisa asked, the question she'd been holding back for 3 days finally breaking free. "Why did you choose me?" Donald was quiet for a long moment, his gaze steady on hers. "Because everyone else in that room was performing. Your sister, the other Omegas your fathers paraded through town over the years, they all knew how to play the game. How to use their scent, their looks, their charm to get what they wanted. But you just stood there like you'd already accepted the worst possible outcome. And when I looked at you, you looked back. Not with fear, not with hope, just observation. Like you were trying to figure me out the same way I was trying to figure you out." "That's why you chose me? Because I looked at you?" "No. I chose you because you were the only one who didn't lie. You didn't pretend to be something you're not. You didn't try to manipulate me with biology or flattery. You were just you. And I need that. I need someone who won't lie to me." Lisa's throat tightened. He'd chosen her because she was too broken to perform. Because her defect, her weak scent, her inability to charm, had somehow become an asset. It wasn't a compliment. It was a calculated decision. He needed something from her, and she happened to fit the criteria. That was all. "I see," she said quietly. "Do you?" Donald leaned forward slightly. "Because I don't think you do. I don't think you have any idea what you're worth." "I'm worth what I can provide," Lisa said. "Isn't that how this works?" "No," Donald said firmly. "That's how your father made it work. That's not how I make it work." "Then how do you make it work?" "Honestly. Directly. I will tell you what I need. You tell me what you need. We figure it out together." Lisa wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that somewhere in the world, there was a version of this story where she wasn't just useful, where she was valued, where she mattered beyond what she could provide. But wanting something didn't make it true. "Okay," she said, because it was easier than arguing. Donald studied her for a moment longer, then returned to his meal. The rest of dinner passed in silence, but it felt different now, less oppressive, more thoughtful. After dinner, Donald walked her back to her room. At the door, he paused. "Tomorrow, I'll be gone most of the day. Pack business. But Laura will be here if you need anything. Feel free to explore the estate. It's your home now. Thank you, Lisa said, the words automatic. Donald's jaw tightened slightly, as if her gratitude bothered him. You don't have to thank me for basic decency. Then he was gone, walking back down the hallway, leaving Lisa standing in the doorway of her beautiful, terrifying room. She closed the door, leaned against it, and slid down to the floor. The weight of the day, of the last 3 days, of her entire life, crashed over her all at once. She wasn't crying. She didn't cry. She'd learned a long time ago that tears didn't change anything. But she was trembling, her hands shaking, her breath coming in short, shallow gasps. She was in a stranger's home, bound to a stranger by a contract she hadn't agreed to, expected to fulfill a role she didn't understand. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was that he was being kind. He was giving her freedom, asking her what she wanted, treating her like a person. And that was more terrifying than cruelty because kindness could be taken away. Cruelty you could prepare for. Kindness made you hope. And hope was the most dangerous thing of all. Lisa pulled herself together, because that's what she did. She stood, changed into her nightdress, and climbed into the massive bed that felt too soft, too luxurious, too much like something she didn't deserve. She stared at the canopy above her, counting the stitches in the fabric, and tried to quiet the voice in her head that said this is temporary, this is a mistake, he will realize you are not enough and you will lose everything. Look, I know you're probably watching this while doing something else, scrolling, half paying attention, and that's fine. But if you're still here, if Lisa's story is hitting something in you, if you've ever felt like you had to earn the right to be wanted, then do me a favor. Just hit subscribe. Not for me. For you. Because you deserve to see how this ends. You deserve to know if she figures it out. And honestly, if you don't subscribe, you're going to forget about this video, and tomorrow when you're lying in bed wondering what happened to Lisa, you won't be able to find it. So subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, what you think Donald's really after, whether you trust him. Just be here. Because this story gets heavier before it gets lighter, and I want you here for it. The next morning, Lisa woke before dawn, a habit she couldn't break even in a place where no one was demanding she rise early. She dressed quietly and made her way downstairs, navigating the silent hallways by memory and guesswork. She found the kitchens eventually, a massive space with multiple stoves and prep areas and a staff that was already beginning their day. A middle-aged woman looked up from kneading dough, her expression surprised. "Can I help you, miss?" Lisa hesitated. I thought I might make some tea." The woman's surprise deepened. "You don't need to do that, miss. Just ring for service and someone will bring you anything you need." "I know," Lisa said. "I'd prefer to do it myself. If that's all right." The woman exchanged glances with another kitchen worker, then shrugged. "Of course, miss. Help yourself." Lisa made her tea, the familiar routine soothing her nerves, and then, because she couldn't help herself, she started organizing. The spice rack was a mess, different heights and sizes jumbled together. She rearranged it while her tea steeped, then noticed the pantry was similarly chaotic, and before she knew it, she was elbow-deep in reorganization, moving jars and boxes and bags into a system that actually made sense. The kitchen staff watched her with a mixture of confusion and amusement, but they didn't stop her. By the time the sun rose, she'd reorganized half the kitchen, and her hands were dusty with flour, her hair escaping its pins. That's when Donald found her. He stood in the doorway, dressed for writing, his expression utterly baffled. "What are you doing?" Lisa looked up from the shelf she was rearranging. "Organizing." "I can see that." "Why?" "Because it was disorganized." Donald walked further into the kitchen, and the staff immediately made themselves scarce, finding urgent tasks in other areas. He picked up a jar of dried herbs, examined it, set it back down precisely where Lisa had placed it. "You know you have staff for this." "I know." "Then why are you doing it?" Because Lisa stopped, struggling to articulate something she didn't fully understand herself. "Because I need to be useful." Donald's expression shifted, something like understanding crossing his face. "You think if you're useful, you'll be harder to get rid of." Lisa didn't confirm or deny it. She just turned back to the shelf. Donald was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What if I told you that you could lie in bed until noon every day, never lift a finger, and I still wouldn't send you back. I wouldn't believe you. Why not? Because that's not how the world works. It's how my world works, Donald said. I didn't bring you here to be a servant. Then why did you bring me here? Lisa turned to face him, frustration finally breaking through her carefully maintained composure. You say you want honesty, so be honest. What do you actually want from me? Donald held her gaze, and for the first time, she saw something vulnerable in his expression. I want someone who won't use me. I want someone who sees me as a person, not a title or a source of power or an alpha to manipulate. My last arranged mate, she had the most intoxicating scent I'd ever encountered. She used it. She used me. She nearly destroyed my pack from the inside, turning alphas against each other, creating factions, all while I was too biologically obsessed with her to see what she was doing. When I finally figured it out, when I finally broke the bond, I swore I'd never let that happen again. And you think I won't do that because my scent is weak, Lisa said, understanding clicking into place. I think you won't do that because you don't have the tools to, Donald said bluntly. And yes, that sounds cruel, but it's true. You can't manipulate me with biology. Which means if you stay, if we build something here, it'll be real. It'll be based on choice, not chemical compulsion. So I'm safe because I'm broken, Lisa said bitterly. You're not broken, Donald said, and there was an edge to his voice now. You're different. And different is exactly what I need. Need, Lisa repeated. Not want. Need. Donald's jaw tightened. Is there a difference? Yes, Lisa said. Need is conditional. Need is temporary. When you don't need me anymore, what happens then? I don't have an answer to that, Donald said. Because I can't predict the future. But I can tell you that I'm not your father. I don't measure people's worth by what they can provide. I measure it by who they are. And who am I? Lisa asked, the question raw and desperate. Donald looked at her for a long moment. I don't know yet. But I'd like to find out. If you'll let me. Lisa wanted to say yes. She wanted to believe that somewhere in this massive estate, in this impossible situation, there was a chance for something real. But belief required trust, and trust required vulnerability, and vulnerability was the fastest way to get hurt. I need time, she said finally. Donald nodded. Take all the time you need. Just stop organizing my kitchen at 5 in the morning. It's unsettling the staff. Despite everything, Lisa felt the corner of her mouth twitch. It needed organizing. I'm sure it did, Donald said, and there was something almost like a smile in his eyes. I'll be back late tonight. Laura will look after you. Then he was gone, leaving Lisa standing in a half-organized kitchen, covered in flour, wondering if she'd just had the most honest conversation of her life or walked straight into a trap she didn't yet understand. The days began to follow a pattern. Donald would leave early, managing pack business that took him across the territory. Laura would find Lisa wherever she'd hidden herself and gently coax her into some activity, a walk in the gardens, tea on the terrace, reading in the library. And Lisa would work. She couldn't help it. She reorganized the library, cataloging books that hadn't been properly categorized in decades. She streamlined the household schedules, identifying inefficiencies that were costing time and money. She repaired torn linens, mended curtains, fixed a squeaky door hinge that had been driving her insane for 3 days. The staff didn't know what to make of her. The Alpha King's mate, working like a servant. But they stopped trying to stop her. They just worked around her, accepting that this was how she was. 2 weeks in, Jay arrived. He was Donald's beta second, sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued, and he made no effort to hide his suspicion of Lisa. He found her in the study, going through old trade ledgers, making notes. "What are you doing?" he asked, his tone accusatory. "Finding errors in your accounting," Lisa said without looking up. "You've been overcharged on grain shipments for the last 6 months. About 15%. Jay snatched the ledger from her hands. "How would you know that?" "Because I can read," Lisa said evenly. "And I know what market rates should be. You're being cheated." Jay's expression was thunderous. "You have no business going through pack finances." "Donald told me I had access to everything," Lisa said. "This falls under everything." Jay leaned down, getting in her space. I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm watching you. One wrong move, one hint that you're trying to sabotage this pack, and I'll make sure Donald sees you for what you really are. And what am I really? Lisa asked, meeting his eyes. A liability, Jay said coldly. An Omega who can't fulfill her biological purpose, can't pacify alphas, can't create pack cohesion. You're a weakness in the Alpha King's armor, and weaknesses get people killed. Then it's a good thing I'm useful in other ways, Lisa said, taking the ledger back. Now if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. Jay stormed out, and Lisa's hands shook as she set down the ledger. But she didn't cry. She didn't let the fear swallow her. She just went back to work, because work was the only thing she could control. That night, Donald found her in the study, still poring over ledgers. It's past midnight, he said. I know, Lisa said. I wanted to finish this. Donald crossed the room, gently took the pen from her hand. It can wait until tomorrow. Lisa looked up at him, exhaustion evident in every line of her face. Can it? Because Jay made it pretty clear that I'm on borrowed time here. That I'm a liability. And he's not wrong. Donald's expression darkened. What did Jay say to you? That I'm weak, Lisa said. That I can't fulfill my biological role. That I'm putting the pack at risk. Jay's an idiot, Donald said flatly. He's your second, Lisa countered. He's probably right. He's wrong, Donald said. You've identified inefficiencies in our trade agreements that have been costing us thousands. You've mediated disputes between pack members that I didn't even know existed. You've made this estate run smoother in 2 weeks than it has in 2 years. That's not a weakness. That's competence. Competence that will matter right up until you need an Omega who can actually, Lisa stopped, swallowing hard. Who can actually do what Omegas are supposed to do. Donald knelt down so they were eye level. Lisa, look at me. She did, reluctantly. I don't want what Omegas are supposed to do, Donald said. I want what you do. I want your mind, your honesty, your refusal to accept inefficiency. I want you exactly as you are. You say that now, Lisa whispered. But what happens during your rut? What happens when you need an Omega sent to manage pack dynamics? What happens when you realize I can't give you that? Donald was quiet for a long moment. Then we'll figure it out. Together. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have, Donald said. Because I don't know what the future holds. But I know I'd rather face it with you than with someone who fits what everyone expects. Lisa wanted to believe him. She wanted it so badly it hurt. But belief was dangerous. Donald stood, offered his hand. Come on. You need to sleep. Lisa took his hand, let him pull her to her feet. They walked through the silent estate together, and at her door, Donald paused. Thank you, he said. For what? For being here. For trying. For not giving up on this yet. Yet, Lisa repeated. That's the key word, isn't it? Donald's expression was unreadable. Good night, Lisa. Good night, Alpha. He flinched slightly at the formality, but didn't correct her. He just walked away, leaving her standing in the doorway, wondering how long she could keep her walls up before something forced them down. 3 weeks in, Joel arrived. He was an unmated alpha from an allied pack, visiting to discuss trade agreements, and he was, in every way, Donald's opposite. Where Donald was intense and controlled, Joel was easy and open. Where Donald's presence demanded attention, Joel's invited conversation. Lisa met him in the library, where she'd been cataloging books for the past 2 days. He'd wandered in, looking for something to read, and found her instead. Hi, he said, smiling. You must be Lisa. I'm Joel. Lisa nodded, waiting for him to leave, but he didn't. He picked up one of the books she'd set aside, examined it. You're reorganizing? The system was inefficient, Lisa said. Mind if I help? I actually like this kind of work. Lisa stared at him. Help? Yeah, Joel said, already pulling books off the shelf. You're doing it by author, right? Alphabetically? By author, then by publication date within each author's works, Lisa corrected. Smart, Joel said. I would have just done alphabetical. This is better. And just like that, without fanfare or command, they worked together. Joel asked questions, Lisa answered. They debated organizational philosophy, the merits of different categorization systems, whether poetry should be separate from prose or integrated by author. It was the most normal conversation Lisa had had since arriving at the estate. Over the next week, Joel became a fixture. He'd find Lisa wherever she was working and ask if he could help. Sometimes she said yes. Sometimes she said no. He never pushed. He just offered. Laura noticed. "Donald told me you've been spending time with Joel," she said one afternoon over tea.